What do you see? What does it show you?
Well, I mean, it shows me a tragedy, Katie, that I wish never happened, right? That never should have happened. It tells me that we need to do a real investigation here. I have concerns about how valid and legitimate this investigation will be, given the pronouncements already made by the White House and the Secretary that this was a valid shooting. But I want this to be an investigation that looks not only at whether or not the use of lethal force in those milliseconds as the car started to drive away was reasonable or not, but also how did we get here? How did we get to a point where why were we not de-escalating, and how could we have gotten in a position where we could have avoided this in the first place? And I think that's the bigger question as well, Katie, writ large, is what can we do at this point to de-escalate things? ICE is an organization that can do a lot of good. And as Director Saldana said, it can get bad guys off the street and do it in a way without causing as much controversy. How can we get back to that?
How do we get back to that? Is it possible to get back to that, given the way we've seen recruitment? I know Caitlin will speak to this a little bit more, but I mean, the recruitment videos that we've seen, the imagery that we've seen, protect our culture in some of it, who they're targeting, the specific folks they're going after, people who already like guns, that they know already like guns, people who go to like wrestling matches. Is that the way to de-escalate? Is that the way to get this done respectfully and effectively in a way that the American public supports, John?
Well, I think it begins with first depoliticizing the situation. Right now, I do think the administration is using ICE as a political football. As you noted earlier at the beginning, immigration enforcement is always deeply political, but it has gone to new levels here, where even a shooting like this, which I think we can all agree is a tragedy, has become an opportunity to divide the country more. Pick sides. Are you with the officer or are you with you're not? I think we should be for the truth here and be for what the investigation demonstrates for us. But I'd also say let's return back to those tactics. Look, the Obama administration, as you noted, did have at that time, record-setting immigration enforcement, controversially, but it was focused, it was targeted. It was focused on individuals with a clear public safety record. That is not what we have here. Although the rhetoric says that is not what the operations say. We're doing things in a much more targeted, lower-profile fashion. And finally, we weren't putting the agents to police against the protesters or protesting them. All of these things inflame the situation. Now, listen, Katie, the assaults are up against the officers. The officers are operating in a very tense environment, and they're under tremendous stress. And there are people who are on the protesting side who are doing bad things. But at the end of the day, the real responsibility lies with the administration and the government to do what they can, and they can do the most of anyone to de-escalate the situation.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that portion of it in a moment. I think that's important as well. But Caitlin, tell me a little bit about how we got here, logistically speaking, how we got here, how exactly ICE built up its team here. Part of it is the money that was afforded to them in the big, beautiful bill, giving a lot more money to DHS for Customs and Border Patrol and also for immigration enforcement. Walk me through this.
So, Katie, one of the first things that President Trump did when he took office was to hand DHS and its components, including ICE, the biggest paycheck they've ever seen, giving them $175 billion for immigration enforcement. That's a budget larger than that of militaries all over the world. The only two countries whose militaries spend more than that amount are the United States and China. And at the same time that these agencies have been given huge amounts of money, oversight is going away. So at the same time, 3 oversight offices within DHS were eliminated early in the Trump administration. They were offices that would go in to investigate on top of law enforcement, on top of inspector generals. Those additional layers were all created by Congress. And the idea is not just to get to the bottom of what happened in this incident, but to ensure that it never happens again. So these are offices that would work on training and policies to make sure that this kind of thing was never repeated. And in fact, instead of that work being done, we have new officers coming in with less training than before. And I want to point out, I've spent the last day and a half talking to longtime ICE officers who've said just from the very beginning, when you look at this video, it's very troubling. And it looks like training that with the really aggressive approach that officers take to Renee, all the way down to, of course, standing in front of a car, which is not advised for law enforcement officers, as well as shooting into a moving car onto these agencies.
They've recruited to. How do they feel about what John was just mentioning? Do they feel like they are being put into dangerous and bad situations? Do they feel like they're being politicized by this administration?
They absolutely feel like they're being politicized, like the work is more controversial than ever, and that people who don't have a lot of experience are being put into bad situations, almost set up to fail. You know, the officer who fired the weapon in killing Renee, he was part of a tactical unit that's been cited to sort of indicate that he has extra training. But what I'm hearing is that that SRT unit that he was on is not one that conducted traffic stops. And traffic stops are complicated. They're very specific. Local police are experts when it comes to traffic stops. ICE agents do not normally carry out traffic stops. And so it may not have been top of mind for him that you shouldn't stand in front of a car, that you shouldn't shoot into a moving car. But the officers I'm speaking to are saying, you know, that's why they think it's a problem that not only is their work being politicized, but it's this all hands on deck situation. You know, people are being asked to do things that they're not used to doing, and they're doing it not only that under incredible pressure, you know, pressure to get these deportations carried out at any cost.
Yeah, everyone is so highly pressurized. The tensions are so high. The anger is there. I mean, just watching that video and seeing what the agent appears to say after he shoots Renee Good, calling her an effing B, after the shots were fired and as her car is crashing, as you know, things for 10 years, 11 years. And my fundamental issue with him, aside from policy and whatever decisions he makes, is that he just tends to bring out the worst in everybody. I mean, the decency is lost. He gives license to people to be their angriest selves. Everybody, you know, it's law enforcement, it's protesters, it's family members, politicians, journalists. Everybody is just so angry all the time in a way that did not exist the way that it does right now, at the level it does right now, at the alarm it does right now, in any other moment in our history that I can remember. Certainly, I mean, I'm only 42, so our history goes back much farther, and we've been through very violent times. But this is just, people are pissed off all the time, and they're so quick to assume the worst in everybody.
It's actually happening here in Minneapolis, of cultures here, because there is a structure of intolerance that is at the heart of the Trump administration, which is colliding with a structure and a culture of tolerance in the state of Minnesota, and particularly in the city of Minneapolis. I'm here in St. Paul right now because there's going to be a vigil at the Capitol here this afternoon, and people are trying to create spaces where people can come and protest safely and peacefully, because remember, this happened. Renee Nicole Good lost her life around the corner, just a few blocks away from where George Floyd was killed, and they're worried about the city erupting in flames again. But one of the ways that people are responding to these ICE raids throughout the city and the anger that people feel is by capturing those videos. The reason that you have so many videos, including the one that you just showed from the ICE agent, but the reason you see so many different is because when ICE decided in the Twin Cities, several organizations organized and encouraged people to capture video of all of this, in part so they could monitor what was happening, in part so they could warn people, their neighbors, their fellow citizens, when ICE was descending in an area, and in part so that they could document this new form of policing that has descended on American cities. We are seeing something we haven't seen before. These are law enforcement officers who are not wearing traditional signage. They are not following police conduct that we have been accustomed to for many decades in this country. They are wearing masks. They are not identifying themselves. They are speaking in a very aggressive way, which often escalates a situation. There's video that I invite people to go and find where they were at a high school clashing with students. And, you know, you talk about tensions. There was tear gas, there was clashes. And in a case where normally you would expect the law enforcement officers to have some training in de-escalation, instead, what you see in that case, what you see in several of these other stops throughout the city, that their rhetoric, their tactics seem to inflame the situation. And that speaks to training. That speaks to mission. That speaks to what their actual goals are. And what's interesting is that the people who are now engaged in a network of monitoring this activity, they are training also in how to de-escalate the situation themselves. The citizens are trying to learn how to de-escalate these situations when they see ICE descending on businesses, on commuters. You know, they pulled a cleaning woman off the street today, and they're trying to learn how to engage in crowd control in the language of de-escalation because they cannot expect that from the immigration officials.